Perfect. Hare Krishna. Okay, so I think we're live. Yeah, we are. Okay, perfect. So hopefully everything will be good. We are, where are we? We're in some place, yeah. Some secret place in the world. And we were going to give class yesterday, but we're doing a japa retreat, and we got here later than I anticipated. So we got here maybe 10 o'clock at night, and I was supposed to do it at 8:30. So anyway, we were able to do it tonight. We had a japa retreat first day, well, second day, first full day. And we just finished kirtan, and we've been going since about 4:30 this morning. And we're finishing up with class, and then we'll also have class tomorrow, Australian time, which will start 3 hours and 15 minutes earlier than today. So, yeah. And 7, so yeah, 3 hours, so tomorrow, at 5:15 our China time, which is 3 hours, 15 minutes earlier, we're going to do class. So, in preparation for this class, I was searching Prabhupada's books under such words as self-hate, self-envy, self-compassion, self-love, envious of one's own self, and so forth. And then I came across something that was written by Bhakti Tirtha Swami that I liked very much, and I took some notes on it, and it was relevant. It's relevant to what we're discussing, and specifically in relation to couples. So I thought, okay, let's talk about it. If you're wondering why I'm bundled up, it's getting down to 2 centigrade tonight, and there's no heat in the buildings. So we have to wear layers and layers of clothes. I've got 4 layers on, actually. So anyway, that's why I'm all dressed up and inside. Yeah. So I'm going to read what Maharaj wrote, and I'm going to discuss it. And it's putting low self-esteem, lack of self-love into perspective in terms of relationships and how that affects relationships. So, people who do not love themselves cannot love others. Anyone looking for a mate should ascertain whether the potential partner has a healthy sense of self-love. People who behave destructively towards themselves cannot love others, and they carry their negative feelings into their relationships. How can such a person make a deep connection with someone else? In particular, people who engage in obviously harmful activities, such as taking drugs, becoming intoxicated, compulsively gambling, or indulging in illicit sex, are doing a disservice to themselves and will share these degrading habits with others. So, if you are married, or if you want to be married, or perhaps even, I think this is somewhat relevant to most relationships, the first point Maharaj is making, and we've made this point before, is that when you're full in yourself, you can give to others. We've given the example that sometimes if you've been fasting all day, and then the feast, like on Janmashtami, is in the evening, and you're one of the servers, sometimes it can be hard to serve when you're hungry. So often what temples discovered was the best policy was let the servers eat first. So maybe they would eat at midnight, and then the devotees would come out after the midnight artik at 12:30, and they're full, and then they can serve peacefully. So that's the concept, that if you are called on, as we are as devotees, to give to others, then you have to be full in yourself to be able to give. Otherwise, you may expect others to give to you, and that's quite common. If we are not satisfied, or we're not happy, or we don't really nurture ourselves, then we expect other people to do that for us. And if you're expecting other people to nurture you, that creates two problems. One, the person may not be able to nurture you, and you're not in a position where you can nurture them. So Maharaj is saying that that's not healthy, but specifically when you go in a relationship, then that unhealthy situation, it starts to... We're at a retreat center, Surajit, in the middle of nowhere. And I really can't tell you where the middle of nowhere is right now. But someday I'll tell you, but not right now. So, yes. So, in some good advice in relationships is give more than it's being given to you. Give more than you get. That's the best way to have a good relationship. Always be the one giving more. And I was thinking about my position, that I travel a lot, and you know, when you travel, when you're a guest, and people, they try to take care of their guests by serving them and facilitating whatever they want. And so, and when you become a spiritual master, also you have disciples and they serve you. And one of the realizations I had was that I have to serve more than I'm being served. That's very, very important. And in any relationship, that is a fantastic formula. Serve more than you're being served. Give more than you're given. And Krishna was making me feel like that perhaps the trap for some, or the difficulty for some, is that they're not reciprocating. They're taking in more service than they're giving, and that could affect them negatively. That could even cause them to fall down. So, that being the principle in any relationship, you should give more than you get. Then what Maharaj is saying is that if you're not full in yourself, then if you're not satisfied with yourself, if you're not nurturing yourself, it's very difficult to give, because you'll always feel somewhat needy, that people need to give you. And we've talked about this before, that I think we talked about in the last class, that it's really dangerous to get your sense of self-worth from another person, because then you become, in an unhealthy way, dependent on them giving you honor or respect or whatever it is you need. And when they don't give it to you, you become upset. And it's very dangerous to depend on others. Prabhupada says in the Bhagavatam, to depend on the mercy of others is a weakness. And he may have been referring to it materially, like in terms of shelter and basic necessities, but I think we could expand that and apply it to emotional dependence. If I depend on another for my emotional needs, that's also, it weakens me. And it's destructive to the relationship. Then Maharaj makes the second point. First point is, he said that if you don't love yourself, you can't contribute well to a relationship. And then the second point is, if you're engaged in destructive activities, such as intoxication or some addictive activity, then you definitely can't contribute. So then Maharaj said that one should be careful in choosing a partner, or one should be careful if one wants a partner, and that partner or oneself is emotionally needy. That's going to create a problem, because sometimes emotionally needy people, they're very high. They have high demands, and their demands are unreasonable, and you'll get caught off guard. You'll offend them for doing nothing, and the problem is you did nothing, and you were supposed to fulfill their emotional needs that they couldn't fulfill themselves, and you don't know why they're upset with you, because you didn't do anything, and they expected you to do something that it's not within reason. So that's the problem. Which book is it from? I'm not sure. It's a section on Grihastha life. I just found it on the folio, but if Jamuna comes to this class, she knows where it is, and she can tell us. And if you know Jamuna, well, jamuna.mp@gmail. Excuse me. Yeah, MP. I think it's MP. Jamuna.mp, mahatmaprabhu@gmail.com. Ask her. I sent her these quotes. She's going to put them up on Telegram. Our Telegram. So she has them, and she said she knew where they were from. So, we'll read various quotes, and I'll explain them. And if you have any questions on each quote or comments, just make them, because I'm going to go to the next one now. Anyway, I think the example of eating is the best example. If you're, or let's say you're bankrupt and you're helping other people get rich. It's kind of difficult to do that, because you don't have any money and you're giving your time to other people to make money. And let's say you were doing it without being remunerated. That would be extremely difficult. And you might even become somewhat resentful of them for becoming wealthy, because you're not wealthy. So, as we often say, or as it is often said, you can't give what you don't have. So I think it's pretty obvious that if you're going to give to other people, you need to have it yourself. And if you don't have it, or you have very little of it and you give it, you'll feel you've given yourself away. And it's going to be difficult for you. So let's read the next one. A profound, loving relationship with such a person, this is a person who lacks self-love, is not possible. Wow, that's a heavy statement. A profound love, in other words, to have a deep relationship with someone who doesn't like themselves or love themselves, it doesn't work, because they're not easy in their own skin. They're having trouble with themselves. And as we're saying, that generally when you have trouble with yourself, you tend to have trouble with everybody else. So, and in one of the classes we talked about the correlation between criticism and lack of self-esteem. And because when you lack self-esteem, you have very high expectations of other people to fulfill your needs, and when they don't, you become critical, and you might blame them for your own problems that you expected they would solve for you. And these are unrealistic expectations, and then because you have unrealistic expectations for people, you'll be very critical of them, and that's why Maharaj is saying that you're not going to have a deep relationship if you or the person you're with lacks self-love. Then he's trying to emphasize how important this point is. Then he says, if we believe anything to the contrary, we are indulging in wishful thinking. In other words, he's saying, you can't have a deep relationship with someone who doesn't love themselves. And if you, let's say, fall in love with such a person, and you think that you can have a deep relationship, you're deluding yourself. because the person can't give to the relationship unless they're full in themselves. And how can you give if you're empty? How can you give charity if you don't have money? Individuals who lack self-love cannot share deeply with others because they only have access to the most superficial aspects of themselves. They cannot share deeply with others because they only have access to the most superficial aspects of themselves. We must keep our eyes open when seeking a partner. If we are frantically searching for someone, we are likely to point our own images on anyone who comes our way. Our own images he means that you don't see the person as they are, you see the person as you'd like them to be. So therefore, you might be attracted to a person who has low self-esteem, who doesn't love themselves, who can't really contribute in a relationship, who is very demanding, and then thank you, perfect, super. Yeah, and then so what happens is that you don't see that, and you like them for other reasons, and you kind of paint an image of what they're like that's not real. And so I think, I really think this is important for us who want to enter into relationships, or who are already in relationships, to understand that if we want to be good partners, we want to be able to give in the relationship, we can't be overly demanding. And if we're overly demanding, it's possible that there's some lack of self-love, and we're trying to get it from others, and that's not healthy. And we may then fault our partners for not giving it and create a very toxic relationship, because in any relationship where partners are fault-finding, I don't want to say any relationship, but often in relationships where partners are fault-finding, so actually personal lack in themselves, and they're upset that their partner can't fulfill the lack in themselves that they should fill. And they're depending on them to fulfill it, and they're criticizing them because they're not. And so, when you enter a relationship, you should go into it being full and ready to give. If you go into it not being full and depending on the other person to make it full, that's when you have problems. Because you're going into something where you should be equipped to give. And so the problem is that a lot of us need to be married, but a lot of us are not whole enough to be married, so that we create a problem for another person who is a nice person, who's not doing anything wrong, and we tell them they're doing everything wrong because we're not satisfied with them, because we're not satisfied in general. Like when Bali offered land to Trivikram, the one who took 3 steps. Why am I not remembering his name? It's late and I'm tired, and maybe jet lag. Anyway, the dwarf Brahmin, what's his name? Upendra? Anyway, he's also known as Trivikram, one who took 3 steps. So he said, could somebody tell me his name? I'm so tired I can't remember his name. He said, Bali said, why don't you take more than 3 steps? He said, because the problem is, if you can't be satisfied with 3 steps, then you're not going to be satisfied with 6 or 9 or 12 or 1,200 or 12 million. So, some people are like that. They'll never be satisfied with anybody. because they're not satisfied with themselves. And so we shouldn't enter into a relationship with someone like that, and we shouldn't enter into a relationship when we're like that, because it doesn't work. Vamana did, yes, Vamana did. Yes. Yeah. The object of our fantasy will appear to possess the most wonderful qualities, because after all, we painted the picture. So he's saying, in such cases, we fall in love with our own conception rather than genuinely caring about the other person. You know, he's saying that if a person is needy, you're not really capable of being a good partner, but you fall in love, so to speak, then you paint a picture of what they're like, and you fall in love with an illusion, and that's why it doesn't work, because then you get to see what they're really like, and realize you fell in love with somebody else. That's pretty sad. Isn't it? So, yeah, I mean, I've done a lot of marriage counseling the last couple of years. Not that I was seeking it, it just came to me. And I've also done a lot of other general counseling, and lots and lots of bad relationships happen when two unfulfilled people come together, or one unfulfilled person comes together, and who's depending on their partner to fulfill them. And yes, partners do fulfill one another, but in a normal sense, it's a normal relationship. The expectations are normal. In the sense, when one lacks self-esteem or lacks self-love, then the expectations are such that it puts undue pressure on a person. And as I said, then the person with low self-esteem becomes very critical and complains a lot. You don't love me, you're not doing enough for me, this and that. And maybe no amount of love is enough. Maybe nothing you do will be enough. So, yes, okay. Now Maharaj really gets into it, because he's talking about something that we briefly covered, and this is when, first he's talking about don't marry someone with low self-esteem, and don't be someone who wants to get married if you have low self-esteem. Zippers in my neck. Look how many shirts I have. 1, 2, 3 shirts and a jacket. So now Maharaj is going to talk about putting two people together and what happens. Two people with low self-esteem coming into a relationship. Typo right out of the book. Are like two thieves coming together to steal from one another. Why did he say that? He says, well, I need you to fill me up. You need me to fill you up. And now there's this battle of we're trying to fill one another up. And neither of us can fill one another up, because we're not full, and we're trying to get the other to fill us up, and it just doesn't work. It's like two people who don't have any food depending on the other person to feed them. How is that going to work? At least one person has to have food. Better both. People without sufficient self-love enter into relationships hoping to find the love they want. In other words, they don't have self-love, and as we've been saying, they enter a relationship to try to find someone to love them, because they don't love themselves. So, if you don't love yourself, then what do? You find somebody to love you. And it's really hard to love someone but doesn't love themselves, and so then you become doubly disappointed. You know, sometimes you try to satisfy someone, you be nice to them, and they're not satisfied because they lack self-love, so they're never satisfied. So you become frustrated, they become frustrated. However, two incomplete people using a relationship to make themselves feel complete usually cannot attain success. So same example, you're hungry, I'm hungry, and then we come together, and how is that going to fulfill our hunger? I can't satisfy your hunger, you can't satisfy my hunger, but I entered into a relationship hoping you could. But how can you? You don't have anything to eat. And you were hoping I could fulfill it, and I don't have anything to eat. And so now we end up hating one another because we expected that one another would feed us. And neither of us can feed the other, and so we're both disappointed. And I've seen this. It's bad with one person, so you can imagine with two. One person, maybe I can fulfill your need. At least you're fulfilled. It might be hard for me, but if I need you also to fulfill my needs because I lack self-esteem, and you can't do it, and I can't fulfill yours, it's going to be really a problem. So both parties wind up feeling cheated. Each person is waiting for the other to make a miracle happen, and both parties wind up feeling cheated. Or, it is like two thieves coming together to steal from each other. They will both cheat and get cheated, or they will both rob and get robbed. Obviously, there will be no deep love or genuine peace in such a relationship. Such people will be failures in the school of love. Yeah, so of course you're probably thinking, well, maybe this description fits me, that I can't give. So what should I do? Well, self-nurturing. You like in spreading Krishna consciousness. Those devotees who are very Krishna conscious, very successful, they nurture themselves all the time. They always take enough time to study, they take time to go to the Dham, they put themselves in ideal positions to chant japa, and so they'll have good rounds, they'll find good association. They won't compromise on their hearing and chanting, they won't compromise on their japa. If the japa isn't going well, they'll do something to improve it, like that. So that nurturing is essential. And it's not selfish, it's actually necessary. So, the thing is, if you're in a relationship, or you're in a position where you have to give, that it's essential that you nurture yourself. A few months ago I was contemplating the question of what is the duty of a guru, or what is the service of a guru. And one of the things that came to me was at least one of the duties, one of the services, I think it's obvious, one of the services is to be Krishna conscious, right? So how does a person in that position be Krishna conscious? Well, number one, they have to make sure that every day they have sufficient hearing and chanting. They want to make sure their rounds are good, because they have to give a lot to other people, right? Gurus really have to give a lot. They have to be examples. They're teachers. They have to be like ahead of the game. They have to be able to guide people. So they have to be a little bit ahead of everyone. And they have to be doing well. Otherwise, how can they be good guides? So that being said, then the duty of the guru is to nurture himself so that he's always in a position to give more and more and more to people, to be as Krishna conscious as possible, to set a good example, to be knowledgeable in Shastra and so forth. So how can he do that service unless he takes care of himself? So that's the idea. So, you know, I'm a little spaced out. I'm pretty tired right now. So my thoughts might get a little separated by a few seconds. But if you know the history of ISKCON, then you know that some of the gurus, the original gurus, they had difficulty. And many of them were amazingly successful as preachers. And it was tragic that they weren't able to maintain it, because the success of preaching is in the stability of leadership. And so, in retrospect, we can look, and probably this is what they realized, that they were working very hard to spread Krishna consciousness, but more important than that was their service to be Krishna conscious. That was really their service, to be exemplary and to be knowledgeable. So, you know, whenever you're in a position where you have to give a lot to others, like if you're a mother or a father or a teacher or head of a company or whatever it is, and whenever you're in a position where you have to be an example, then you really have to take care of yourself. You really have to nurture yourself. And nurture, it'll be different for different people. Of course, as devotees, there's certain things we all do, but for someone it may be reading Bhagavatam, for someone it may be spending time in India, for someone it may be doing Harinam Sankirtan, for someone it may be focusing on their health more than they have in the past. So the idea is that when you're full, then now you can function on the highest level, and you'll have the most to give and the most energy to give. So that's the idea. Otherwise, Maharaj is saying, if two people are both empty and they're trying to get fulfilled by the other person, then there'll be no deep love or genuine peace in such a relationship. And they'll fail, the relationship will fail. So his message is, don't enter into a relationship if you can't give. Such a simple thing, but I think most people, or many of us, don't even realize that maybe we do have low self-esteem. Maybe we are expecting too much of others and we can't give, and we're not even aware of that. So maybe this class will help you become more self-aware. So let's read on. These are very to-the-point statements. And super relevant to the world today, as far as I've seen it. This is just very, very common problem. And it seems as Kali Yuga progresses, individuals are now their lives or their minds or their hearts are filled with more problems than ever before. At least that's what it seems like to me. And divorce rate is rising, and it makes sense that as individuals have problems, they become problems for their partners. They don't make good partners. So, yeah. So it's necessary that if we have problems, to work on them, be better partners. Okay, let's read the next one. Love is about a quest for wholeness, and if necessary, having a partner to share one's wholeness with. No. Love, and he's saying, love is a quest for wholeness, and if necessary, have a partner. This is Spiritual Warrior, but I don't know which volume. It might be volume 2, by Bhakti-tirtha Swami. People who think that some other person will make them complete, or people who are waiting for love to come their way, will remain impoverished and waiting. The more we become loving and whole, the more we will draw similar connections. They're saying, She's making the same point, but saying that, I'm not whole, but I'm going to wait for the perfect person to make me whole. But he's turning that around and he's saying, the more you become loving and whole, the more you will draw or attract a similar person. So, long, long ago I saw something going on, at least I thought I saw this, and I confirmed that I did see it. I mean, sometimes you see something and you analyze it to be something it isn't, but sometimes I would see that a woman would get married, and she was under the concept, and maybe this is true for men as well, that once I get married, all my problems will go away. That just having a spouse will be the solution to my problems. And in other words, it's the assumption that before they're married, the problems they're having are due to the fact that they're single. And they would think it's kind of like automatically, when I get married, just because I have a spouse, then everything will be okay. And unfortunately, it doesn't work that way. And so, a lot of times they were just totally disappointed, illusioned by the fact, illusioned by the reality that just because you have a good husband or a good wife, it doesn't mean you don't have to work on yourself, that they're going to do everything for you. No, in some cases there is truth to that having a good husband or wife can make a difference in your life. But thinking that it's a panacea for all your problems, that's not true. So, I've seen that many, many times. And thinking, then you can take it up to the guru. Well, once I get initiated, then all my problems will go away. But actually, we don't see that. Sometimes we see that all your problems start after initiation. As strange as that sounds, that does happen. So, nothing external to us is a panacea. Nobody outside of ourselves is a panacea for our problems. And if we think that way, we're making a mistake. So, that's kind of what Maharaj is saying, that you marry a person who can't fulfill you, thinking that they're going to solve your problems, they're going to fulfill you. And then it doesn't work. And then he makes the point that if you nurture yourself so that you're whole and you can give, there's a good chance you're going to attract somebody like that. And if you're not like that and you're trying to attract a person to make you whole, then you might find somebody who's also not whole like you. Like attracts like. This is so interesting. What Maharaj is talking about here is you'll find a lot of this in popular books on marriage. I liked it so much because it was so to the point and so relevant and true and whatever. I'm trying to, Love is not about two desperate people who are only trying to find fulfillment for themselves, coming together to rob each other. Two extremely needy, selfish people coming together cannot make each other happy. They are too busy trying to take and get something for themselves at the expense of the other. Sometimes a spouse will complain, you never do this or that, or you never give this or that. It could be a sign of your own lack of self-fulfillment. Because I find personally, this is just me, but I think the discovery I've made is true and relevant, that if you don't need your spouse to be anything for you to be happy. You need to be Krishna conscious to be happy. And when you're Krishna conscious, then your spouse can do what your spouse wants to do, and it doesn't upset you, and you're not dependent on it for your success. I mean, it's nice that you have a good relationship, but even if it's not the best relationship, but if you're satisfied in Krishna consciousness and you're fulfilled, you're happy to let your spouse find their own way and do what they want, and because you're not dependent on them being a certain way. Like for example, I find this common, that a lot of, excuse me, I'm straightening my back. It's kind of needs straightening. Okay. So, a lot of times, and I've experienced this, so I understand it, devotees will, write me and say that they're not happy with their spouse because they like to get up early and chant, their spouse doesn't like to get up early. So I understand that, but the thing is, if you get up early and you do what you have to do and you're absorbed and satisfied, just be satisfied. If they can't get up early, it's okay. It doesn't matter. As long as you're happy doing it, then you'll be happy. If they can do it, that's nice. If they can't, it's okay. And so a lot of people make that as a kind of a fundamental rule in their marriage, that we have to be alike in every area, we have to do the same things. And what you'll find, at least what I've seen in good marriages, is like the husband and wife can do a lot of things independently. They can do a lot of different things. But because they're fulfilled within themselves, then they're okay doing different things. They don't feel the need that they have to do everything together. And they're happy. They're happy with one another. So maybe when you feel like your spouse has to do it, things that you're doing, maybe you feel weak, you can't do it without them, or in some way unfulfilled, but you don't always need them. Sometimes you just have to be independent. If they don't want or can't participate in something that you'd like them to do. So I found that if you think that way, your relationship will be better. But if you depend on them for your own strength, or for too many of you, if you depend on them for too many of your needs, then it's very easy to resent them when they don't fulfill those needs. This is quite common. And I was talking to a lady last week, and she'd been doing the 12-step program, and she'd been doing it for quite some time. And she said one of the steps is to go through all the people you have from the past you have issues with, and what the issue is, and why the issue is there, and what was your perception of what the person was doing. And she said when you make the list, you find out you have hundreds of issues in your life. Isn't that interesting? If you go back through your life and you see issues, an issue with this one, with that one, and I said, well, how many issues do you have? And she said, you go through your life, you see you have issues with hundreds of people. And another devotee who was going through the process told me the same thing. I was shocked. Because in our forgiveness workshop, we're dealing with one issue. Maybe there's only one or a few. But they were saying that even the little things, the little upsets you've had, can be little resentments that are continuing in our life because of all the expectations we had, because of a lack of our own self-satisfaction. And then we needed so many other people to satisfy us because we couldn't satisfy ourselves. And that's just it makes life very difficult for everybody, right? Too extremely needy, Selfish people coming together cannot make each other happy. They're too busy trying to take and get something for themselves at the expense of the other. It's also, it's also a fundamental principle of marriage to not think the other person can make you happy, but to understand that Krishna consciousness can make you happy, and the relationship, if it's Krishna conscious, it can make you happy. You need to make me happy. No, we come together to enhance our Krishna consciousness. And that will make us happy. And you do your part, and your partner does their part. And whatever they can't do, you still do. You shouldn't minimize. You shouldn't minimize your devotional service because your partner may not be doing as much as you want them to. A lot of devotees are affected by that, and that's not smart. So let's read the next one. If I can stay awake long enough to read it. We have two more. Hopefully I can stay awake to read two more. Love is seeing our partner as a gift from God. We must go beyond merely loving our neighbors as ourselves. We should actually love others, especially our mates, even more than we love ourselves. Isn't that nice? I appreciate that. Love your mate more than you love yourself. Wow. That's amazing. When we love our partners that much, we realize that they have been given to us as gifts from God and that we do not own them. We are merely caretakers on behalf of the Lord, and our responsibility is to fulfill the Lord's wishes concerning them. Any attempt to dominate them becomes distasteful. Instead, we should make efforts to bring out their higher qualities, a practice that will also bring out our own higher nature. Yes, okay. I think that's clear. So, to be loved is a human need. Right? And so, we want our partner to love us. But Maharaj is saying, you should love them more than you even love yourself. That's nice. And, yes. And the last one, love is having or looking for a partner to heal the world, not to escape it. Normally, people may seek out a partner to escape the world. They are miserable with life and they feel that everything else can be tolerated or fixed if they somehow or other find that special person. We cannot heal the world if we are too wounded ourselves. It's a nice thought. I really like that one also. Why should we get married? Well, then we can make the world better. We'll come together, we'll make the world better. We'll try to heal the world. The world needs healing. We're not coming together to escape the world, we're coming to heal it. We cannot heal the world if we are too wounded ourselves. Yeah. So you get two healthy people, come together, establish a good relationship, and then they can actually be healers in the sense of helping other people. So that's the idea. So, I am so tired, I don't know if I can continue. And we have to get up early tomorrow. And I have to be a good example because I'm leading the japa retreat. So I'm going to ask your forgiveness for ending the class 11 minutes early. But I think it'll be better. I don't want to strain myself. So is that all right with you? Do I have your blessings and permission? And so right now it's 9:20. So 4 hours earlier, 4 hours and 4 minutes earlier, tomorrow we'll give another class. Okay, and I'll be more awake then. Okay, so thank you for watching. Hare Krishna, we'll see you tomorrow if you have time. All glories to Prabhupada.